Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mio, CEO of the experience agency D Flash. Each week, I bring up someone different from business who's doing some game changing work. And in this episode, it's no different. I'm super excited to have Sharon-Frances Moore, who's the founder of Shances. We'll talk about all things etiquette and how she figured out how to build this into a really phenomenal business and so much more. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hi, Sharon-Frances.
Hello.
How's it going?
Everything's great.
Perfect. We're not like in the middle of a pandemic and everything's on fire, right?
Yeah, everything is on fire, but sometimes you have to center yourself and realize that that's around you and everything could be great within your own space.
That's a lovely way of thinking about it. You know, as the world might be on fire on the outside, the power of podcast stays the same. And so the first question stays the same. So, Sharon-Frances, what was your first job?
My first job was working at WNYC TV in New York, which was a small local New York television station. And I really enjoyed it. And that's, of course, in between babysitting and running errands for people. That was actually my very first job.
And what did you have to do?
I helped the development executives and other television executives just make sure that the shows that were supposed to be on TV were appropriate for the network, intriguing, and would help increase ratings.
And did you know what you were doing at that point, or you're just like, I'll just wing this?
No, I was 18. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew it was by my favorite pizza place, and I could take the #1 train down there.
Nice.
And it seemed like a really neat job. So I figured I would jump into it. And I always had an interest in television and entertainment. And I've had the opportunity to work within that business in and out for over 20 plus years.
Fantastic. So how does one go from starting at WNYC at 18 years old and kind of figuring out to creating Shances? Like, what was that journey like?
It was a short journey, actually. So when I was 19, I was at University of Maryland. At that time, I was a sophomore. And I had a friend who was on the football team who used to get really great meals in the cafeteria because the football players just ate better than everyone else. And he used to sneak me out steaks. So one day I picked up some steaks, put it in my backpack, and was off to my dorm very happy. And one of the coaches stopped me, and I thought, oh my gosh, he could smell the meat radiating from my bag, and I'm going to get in trouble. And he said, listen, I hear you eat good. And I was all ready for my excuse. I was like, I eat very well, sir. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, I hear that you have great table manners. And I grew up traveling abroad with my family. I had 2 parents that had very dynamic jobs that exposed us to a lot of different experiences, including fine dining, wine, etc. And he was right. I had impeccable table manners. And he said, would you be willing to teach some of the athletes and seniors who are going to interviews how to eat correctly during interviews? And I thought, well, I don't know. And he said, well, every time you teach them, you get to eat for free. So I was like, I could do this. That's kind of how Shances began. Of course, I took formal classes. I ended up working for a United States Senator, being Director of Community Affairs, and then also doing etiquette, teaching members of the White House, foreign press, and corporations, and the business just built on from there. But it all started at the University of Maryland on campus, teaching my fellow students how to eat properly for interviews.
Wow. You know, it's interesting. I know, and one of the reasons I was just so fascinated by what you do is that I feel like there's always this sort of weirdness around us, especially for some Black people, where it's like, oh, if you do stuff like that, you're acting white or something along those lines. Right. And you're like, no, I'm just doing what I need to do. So I'm sure along your way, you've run into those sorts of comments.
I do, and I get comments about it being antiquated and something that you don't need to know. But my belief is that etiquette's important for 5 major reasons. One is that it can be used as an exclusionary tool to bully and dominate and maintain hierarchy. And if you know those rules, you can't be bullied and you can't be excluded. You can walk into any room and command that room. The second is business etiquette, which is really important. It shows professionalism. People feel comfortable with you. If you're in an outward facing position like sales or marketing, it's extremely important. I had a lot of people once tell me, I was doing a class with people at Amazon, and they said, oh, we're very relaxed here. We don't have to know these rules. And I said, yes, but your president just had dinner with the president of the United States, walked into the White House in a tuxedo, and I'm sure he knew how to use the place setting in front of him. So even though you might not need it for your everyday, sometimes you really do need it in business. Again, the third is generational success. I have a lot of people who their parents were busy working parents and didn't have the time to kind of soften some of the rough edges, and they can do this for their children by teaching them etiquette. And etiquette is broad. It's how to eat, how to dress, how to respect another culture. It's multifaceted.
Yeah, and it's funny because so I'm English. I was born in England, came here when I was a little kid, no discernible accent. And my parents are Jamaican, and so etiquette is something that we. So I see why you're laughing because you already know the answer. So like this was something that was sort of drilled into my brain from birth. I don't think I ever had a time when I didn't know a place setting where the cups went, how to sit in the chair, how to sit up straight, and use my knife and fork and spoon in the appropriate fashion. And I think there was always this meticulous level of detail that was just ingrained in our family. And I think it came largely from the Jamaican culture, which was, very much, affected by like the royal British culture, and how to do things a certain way. And, from time to time, I would hear from folks like, why are you sitting that way? Or like, what are you doing? I'm like, because this is just the way that it is. And you're right. I think people forget that, like, look, this is the world we live in. And there are systems in place to exclude people who look like us. And
Yes.
so if you can, and don't act like they're not. Even though we're in this really interesting moment of unrest where a lot of these conversations are sort of blowing out into the open, we still know that these situations matter, and that having this understanding of the way things are in certain places only helps you. It's not a hindrance.
It does. And it also could give you the edge. It could give you
Bingo.
the edge to get a job. I also teach etiquette as it pertains to social media, for etiquette as it pertains to interviewing, dressing correctly. All of those little things could help you beat out the next guy for the job that you really want.
As we talk about social media, can you please give us some tips on things you should not be doing on the internet if you'd like to get a job in the future? Because I see so much stuff of my little cousins where I'm like, why are you posting wake and bake photographs on Instagram? If I can see them, anyone can see them.
This is true. And what I've learned, I teach at a lot of universities and colleges, is that the internet, unfortunately, is not something that is fleeting. When you put something out there, it's like a tattoo. It is permanent, and it will go with you throughout your whole life and surface when you don't even think that it can be surfaced. I tell people when it comes to the social media, especially if you're going for a job, the people that you follow, the things that you read, the movies that you watch, that you post should align with your goal. So if you say that you want to be a social worker or you want to be a scientist, then you should pick books, movies, and people to follow that support that goal. And you should also look at who's following you, because people look at that. So it's not only who you follow and what you like, but who's following you. And people will judge you. And I have a lot of people, especially millennials, who will say to me, I shouldn't be judged. No, you shouldn't be judged. But the reality is that you are judged. So you want to keep your private life private, and anything that you're going to share, you want to make sure that the person who's interviewing you would find it a bonus to your position and to that job.
Absolutely. This is the thing that blows my mind. It's like, there are so many tools that are available to you that I didn't even have when I graduated from college almost 20 years ago. It's, the world has shifted that far in 20 years. I
It
was going to say
has.
in 10, whereby like you have so much access and you can read so much more about the people who you want to work with. You can follow them on social media and understand who they are in a way that you could never before. It was always kind of a guessing game
Mm-hmm.
before and trying to getting a little bit of a nugget around them. But then also because of that, this gives you a bigger picture into understanding how you approach, but then also how you interact. And how are you seeing this now, especially now with all these college students now who are fresh out of college now and have to adapt in this world where you can't really go out and meet people, you're all kind of stuck at home.
It's a challenge. I really feel for them. It's going to be tough and it's going to be competitive finding jobs. I think the economic downturn is right in front of us. I think it's going to be really tough in October, especially. And I think that that's why these little things, little tweaks in your social media or how to dress or how to interview could help you beat out the next person. And it's just exceedingly important. So I tell everybody, take time. It might take you days. Go through all of your pictures, go through all of your quote unquote friends, and really see if they reflect um, what you want them to reflect in terms of you. Do they represent who you are in a way that would help you get employed?
Because it's all about just getting yourself employed, but then also retaining the job. Because I think for some folks, it's like, okay, I got in, isn't this great?
Yeah,
And
and I'm
the
sorry.
retention. Oh, no worries. But I think the retention part of it, like, how do I now fit in like the going to the dinners, going to the parties? Because at some point that stuff comes back. Like, what are some of those things where it's important for folks once you've gotten in, how to sort of be able to fit in appropriately so that you can get to that next level?
Right. So when I teach this class, I always talk about the 30, 60, 90-day plan. But in particular, the top tips I give, look at the person who's 2 levels above you in that company. See how they dress, how they act, and try to mimic where you want to be versus where you are. And I'll give you a good example. There was a young man who called me. He worked at an entertainment company, and he wanted to rise up in the legal department. And he always wore jeans and a t-shirt. And I told him, I said, you should at least keep a button-down shirt in your drawer and a jacket behind your door. So if you ever have an opportunity to go to the C-suite, you would be dressed in together. And he said to me, no, my boss dresses like this, I'm fine. I got a call 3 months later and he was heartbroken. The CEO of the firm decided to invite the entire legal team, all of the lawyers and paralegals up to the C-suite to meet everybody. It was an opportunity to be in the room with people they normally would not get to be in the room with, and he wasn't dressed appropriately and he couldn't go. And if he had just had that jacket and shirt behind his door in his office, he could have thrown that on and gone. So sometimes it's understanding what a uniform is. People understand if the guy rings the doorbell and he says his UPS, he's going to be wearing brown. It's the same thing for every corporation and company. There's a uniform, and you just have to kind of know what that is and dress appropriately. I always tell people, don't drink. And if you're going to drink, have one and that's it. Everyone always thinks they can handle their liquor, and it always creates a problem. They always talk too much or are too loose. Eating properly, because people do judge you on how you eat and how you sit, and how to work a room. One of the things I teach in the class, which people love, is how to pit and pivot out of difficult conversations. And in this
That's a good one.
political climate, it's really important to know how not to give your opinion, because you really don't know the other person's opinion, and you shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
giving political opinions at work. It gets you in trouble.
Oh, please give the advice 1,001 times because people do not understand. Like, and just I think that I think the nature of it all, like there is this sort of again weird stigma around like if you go to the parties, if you go to the cocktail hours, and again you're not bringing your whole self to work. And my response to that is uh, you've got to play the game. There is a game that exists, and so therefore you've got to play that and be smart about it. So, best advice I ever got, the same thing was like, there were no dress rehearsals, so always have your uniform, so that if you get invited, you can just walk in and it not be weird. Like, you'll be dressed appropriately, you'll look the part, and you can work that room as if you own the place when you first walked in.
And you can bring your whole self into a place, but it doesn't mean you have to expose your entire self to everybody. So it's also knowing what should remain private and what should remain public. And a lot of times people have a hard time distinguishing between the two. And then they get in situations where people are offended, or people think they're immature, or they start second guessing whether they could send them to a client meeting. All of those things can be remedied by knowing how to keep certain aspects of your private life and your opinions to yourself, because work really isn't the place for that.
Well, that's the thing. I think sometimes, with these new social environments, especially with like a lot of technology companies where, you get to, you get your lunch, your breakfast and dinner for free. And like, they want you to sort of be who you are and all this stuff, forgetting that you're still in the corporate environment. Even if, you are there, and you get all these kind of free goodies, like there are still some degree of social mores that you have to follow in order to move up. That's just the way the world works.
And some of these companies are outwardly liberal, but internally conservative. So just because you get to come in and they're giving you breakfast and dinner and there's a ping pong table and everyone dresses casually, doesn't mean that the internal workings of the company and the people who run the company are actually liberal. They can be very conservative in their thinking. So you have to be careful with that also. And that's also just basically knowing the people that you work for and work with. And a lot of people don't do their homework either when it comes to that. And that's something that we teach in our interview ninja class.
Mm-hmm. And what's been the one thing that you've seen, and I think because as you sort of like the making work so casual, it's made people become so casual. And even now, even with the blend of Zoom, where like folks are not dressing up for their meetings on Zoom, they're like kind of like, oh, whatever. How have you sort of helped people adapt in this time of like, even though you're working from home, even though you are sitting on your couch, you still have to have that same degree of professionalism and the look in the face to actually get where you need to go, even during this time of when you're working from home?
One day you're going to go back to work. One day you will not be home. And what you don't want to be is the person that people remember every time they called, your dog was barking, or every time they called, you looked a mess. You want to keep the same professionalism that you would have kept inside the office, outside the office. And I know it's tricky. People have children, they have pets, they have outside noise if they live in big cities like New York. But to try to, when you have those meetings, to make your environment as quiet and professional as possible is tantamount to success. Because when we do go back, you want the last thing for people to remember to be that you were professional and you still were able to do your job in that kind of manner.
Yeah, I think it's so very important, because I look at some things and I'm like, what are you doing? I get it, you're home, but okay. But if I could throw on a nice shirt, no one's telling you to wear a cocktail gown, but like I might be wearing shorts, but you're not seeing the shorts I'm wearing. You're gonna see this very nice silk top I'm wearing, and you will see the makeup that's on my face. Hair is combed, and I think.
And you really want people to talk about your work and not about you. And what it does, it really creates a distraction. It pulls away from what you're saying because people are too busy looking at what you look like, which isn't fair, but that's life.
That's not fair.
So you really want to make sure that you're dressed. And if you dress for a Zoom meeting, or for, even if it's a phone call and no one can see you, you would be surprised what it does to you psychologically. You speak different, you sit differently, and you still come across as professional. And I feel that sometimes if you're doing it in your pajamas or your t-shirt and shorts, it can make you feel that the situation is more casual than what it really is. You're still talking to your employer and your fellow colleagues.
You know, that's so true. Because there was one event that I did, and I wasn't part of the event, but I was just technically just supposed to be listening, and then I ended up having to go on camera. But because I thought I was going to just be on audio and not video, I just like threw on a shirt and it was just like whatever. And of course, something happened where then I had to go on camera, and I looked not typical Super Laura. Let's put it that way. Like, and here's the thing: because everyone knows I am always so buttoned up, I always wear a bright color. I always have a bright colored lip. You can always, I'm pretty much wearing makeup usually all the time, so skin is flawless, and none of that was the case that day. You know, one of the women who knows me and was like, Laura, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, you look really tired. Is the pandemic getting to you? And I was like,
and those are the
no.
distractions that you want to avoid.
And I was like, God, no. But like I realized, but that was the first and the only time I've ever done that. I was like, I don't care what it is now, even if I'm wearing like how tired I am, I will put on a bright colored shirt. I will put on some degree of makeup. And so it bright, because that action of doing that stuff also wakes you up. Like the action of putting on like a bright colored shirt, or putting on a lip or something. Yeah, you're right. Your whole energy shifts.
It does. And you don't want people to make assumptions about you. You don't want your colleagues to say, wow, she looked really, really tired, so we're going to not give her this project because she looked this way. That's not for them to make that determination. But you're kind of leading them there if you're not looking together and professional. And you don't want that. You always want to be able to be the person that, especially when it comes to business, that people think they can rely on.
Exactly. You become the you don't want to become the focus of like what's going on with her, versus like, no, you're the focus because you're the one leading the room and like telling everybody what to do because you're a shot caller. That's just so key. You know, looking back on all the work you've done over the years, what do you think you probably tell 25-year-old Shances?
I would tell her save some more money and get a better 401k. You know, I really don't look back. I made the best decisions I could make with the knowledge I had at the time that I had it. So I did the best that I could when I was 25. I think we all kind of do that. What I tell people who are 25 now is to invest in themselves in a way that will help them in their future. And that's not just financially, but it's also creating a better them, which I was very fortunate to be able to do when I was 25, because I had fantastic mentors and people who were able to help me along.
I think it's so key to remember that, like, you know, that's the thing. It's, you can only do the stuff you can do at that particular moment. And not everything is going to be solved by the time you're 30. And
No,
I see so many young people racing towards, like, I don't have all this stuff figured out by the time I'm 30, I'm a failure. And I'm like I couldn't imagine if someone had told me that, okay, I just turned 40 in February, and like I feel like I'm probably the best at my business right now, even though my business is completely upside down because we're in the middle of the pandemic. But I'm feeling better. I'm probably in the best shape of my life. I think my relationships are better, and yeah, I'm 40. So it took a while, but I'd rather I get to the place I needed to go than try and pack it in by the time I'm 30. And also enjoy that ride. It's like
they should. You know, you only get one turn, and when you're young, you should enjoy a lot of things. You know, as you grow older, you enjoy different things differently. And I think if you concentrate on trying to hit certain goals by the time you're a certain age, life will come for you. You know, you might have those things lined up and then something happens in your life and you have to be able to roll with the punches. And I think a lot of times younger people, especially nowadays, they don't know how to zig and zag and kind of stand back up, dust themselves off, and keep moving forward. It's just not the end of the world. You'll still
It really
progress, you'll
isn't.
still grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, but I'm sure. Like, tell me about a time in your life where you had a really surprising challenge, and how did you get through it?
Well, I think every part of my life I've had challenges. I mean, that's what life is. And I get through it knowing that tomorrow is just another day. I happen to be a faith-based person, so that helps me. But also just I'm a problem solver. So I look at the problems, I try to solve it, and I do the best that I can, and I just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, that's all you can do. I mean, I think the more we hammer that home, I think the more folks will see it. That this, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint.
And you shouldn't
And
compare yourself to others. I think the difference also nowadays is there's a lot of comparison.
mhm.
And you look at someone's Instagram or you look at someone's post and you think, oh my gosh, they have this wonderful life. And then look at my life. But you have to understand that no one's posting the days that they wake up and they're tired or their hair is messed up or they just had a fight with their spouse or the dog ripped up the pillow from the couch. No one posts the hard stuff. They only post the beautiful stuff. So people shouldn't look at that and think, oh my gosh, I'm not living like this person's living. You need to live your best life and put room in there for the challenges that are inevitably going to come.
Yeah, I think that's a hard part, especially for younger folks who, it's Instagram life versus real life. And it creates this unnecessary
Yeah,
pressure where you assume that you've got to do all this stuff because you see all this other stuff that people are doing. It's like, okay, well, great. Well, they might come from a wealthy family, so that of course they can be in Bali every couple of weeks. But like, that's not the situation. Or it could be that, like, they're just doing this because they're having a lot of other personal issues. And just like how you shouldn't compare yourself to the life of a celebrity, you shouldn't compare your life to your friend who's posting on Instagram how awesome life is, because you just never know.
you don't.
We're all
And even if their life is awesome, it doesn't mean that your life is less than. It's a different life. And I think that being content with what you're doing and your now is very important versus looking at someone else and thinking, I've got to strive to be them. You have to strive to create a space for yourself that's going to make you happy, productive, and be able to contribute to society.
absolutely. And I think that's kind of rolls into my next question, where it's like, it's so hard to like catch up with all this stuff and be okay with the way the world is right at this very moment. So what are you doing for your self-care?
Well, what I do is something that I've been doing for years. When I wake up in the morning, I always say 5 things I'm thankful for. And they vary every morning. But I wake up knowing that I'm thankful for 5 things that are going on in my life. And then I meet each day with purpose. So whether it's a list of things that I want to do for my business, for my job, for my family, for my house, it's living that day with purpose. So at the end of the day, I know that I accomplished something. And sometimes that purpose might be just to take care of myself and sit on the couch and watch Netflix. Or it could be gardening. It doesn't always have to be business oriented, but I do think it helps to have a daily purpose and goals.
Yeah, I think writing down that list is something that I've started to do myself. And it's helped me sort of like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to do today. And oh, by the way, if that means buggering off today, then that's what I'm going to do.
That's it.
Because let's just do
It
it.
doesn't always have to be, from 1 to 100. Sometimes you just have to put the car in idle and relax for a day, and that's all right.
And give yourself a break, because
Mhm.
it's just necessary. Like, I think, especially now with this pandemic, I think sometimes people think they have to be super productive, that they have to write that next great American novel, they have to lose 50 pounds, and all this other stuff. And it's like, we've never had this before. in recent memory. We're talking about over 100 years ago was the last time there was a global pandemic. And so how we survive this is how we survive this. It's not about accomplishing every single thing that you thought you had to do because you had this time at home. It's like, no, surviving this. Like, you're making it through, no matter how weird you see people acting on Instagram. It's like, you're surviving this and you're getting through each day and you're taking care of yourself. That's the most important thing.
And everybody's survival is different. Not everybody has the same game plan. And that's all right. Just as long as when you come out of it, you could look back and say, I'm steady, I was productive, and I made it through. Because again, eventually, one day, we will all be out of this. This is not going to last forever.
We will actually be able to sit at a table again and
There
actually
you
eat
go.
with a knife
I'm
and
looking
fork.
forward to that.
Oh my gosh, am I so looking forward to being able to go out to dinner and just sit at a table or go to a dinner party, like, and work the room. Like those little things. I think about like the last dinner party that I went to right before this. And I remember thinking, like, we were all 20 women around a table chit-chatting, sitting very close to each other. And thinking now, like 5 months later, like, what? At a dinner party with a bunch of strangers who I don't know?
Yeah.
That close? Would I do that?
But one day you will. And for those who are gearing up to go back to work and thinking about going to those cocktail parties or learning how to interview, that's what I'm here for. And we have tons of things on our website, my team and I, that are geared to help people teach themselves. And we also have classes that people can take so that when the pandemic is over, they could hit the ground running.
Awesome. You beautifully segued into my last question. I love that, Shances. So, Shances, last question is, do you have a give and or an ask of the audience, which I think you just started to give?
Well, I would say invest in yourself. And it doesn't only have to be coming to Shances website, but it's a good start. So first, let me spell Shances. It's actually SHANCES.com. And you can go through and take some self-guided classes. We have some fall classes that you could sign up for. Learn about everything from white tie to business casual dress, the right wine glass, 28-piece place settings, the best way to create an atmosphere at a cocktail party. And we also have a COVID-19 page, which is filled of fun activities that you can do at home with your friends and family, and little tips from everything from food freezing 101 to doing a high tea on a Sunday for your family and friends.
Awesome. I encourage you all to check out Shances.com and take the classes. And because you're right, we're going to get out of this. And so you don't want to be left behind when we get out of this. So do take your advice. Well, Shances, I could keep on chatting with you about all things etiquette because it's one of my favorite topics. Thank you so very much for the great advice. Like I said, I encourage everyone to check out your website. We'll put everything in the show notes so folks can find you. And as I said, just everyone can take good care of themselves right now. And remember, since this is going to end at some point, you want to make sure that you take good care of yourself and put yourself in a position to be successful right now. And with that.
I wish everyone well, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation.
Awesome, thanks. And that is our show.